So for today's objective, we're going to provide you with some tips and tricks to increase your efficiency in production. And speed is a good thing. And everybody that's been in this industry for a while can tell you that this industry has really changed over the years. We used to get, I don't know, 7 to 10 business days, sometimes 2 weeks to actually do orders. And with online sales and the pressure from companies like Amazon and others, it's increasingly, the demand for shipping sooner is just overwhelming. And so that's why we're doing the webinar today. So as we all know, we can only run our presses at a certain amount of speed, okay? Because if you reach a certain point, you're just going to have much more misprints. So today we're going to talk about some strategies that can influence getting more done in a day. So that's what today's objective is about. So we're going to talk about proactive thinking. How can you think ahead on what you're doing throughout your entire business to get more things handled at a faster rate so you can ship more in a day? We're going to talk about minimizing downtime, because remember, if you're not decorating a shirt, you're not making money. So every minute that press or that embroidery machine or that heat press equipment or that DTG printer or sublimation printer or whatever you're using, every minute that that stuff isn't running, you're losing money. So we want to minimize our downtime, okay? We want to be organized. We want to make sure we exactly know what we're doing and we're prepared for the future. We want to standardize things as much as we can. This is in our language we use, the actions we have, just everything that we can do. We can standardize the process. It allows us to move faster. We're going to talk about using automation, equipment, thinking, standardized things, all fit into this automated kind of workflow. And we're going to talk about your team, how we can work together as a team to achieve our goals, how training influences speed. And so that's kind of the outline of today's discussion. I'm not going to get into how to run your press faster or how to speed up your embroidery machine, that type of stuff. So today's thinking is just really about setting yourselves up for success by having great workflow building blocks. That's kind of the key component here. So let's get into it. Speed is good, okay? It's going to give you a competitive edge over your competition, because if they're slower and you're faster, you're going to be more attractive to your customers. So let's talk about that. So as we mentioned, you don't want to be locked into that 7 to 10, 5 to 7 or 7 to 10 turn cycle. And that's because online, everybody is focused now on same day, next day, and mostly in our industry for shops, it's really about a 3 to 5 day turn. That's where people are really hitting now. Amazon is really focused on with their Merch by Amazon platform and doing things the same day or next day. So you're going to see more and more people focused on that, and that's going to be in the future, especially this year, maybe the next. You're going to have to figure that out. So some things to keep in mind. Be willing to try and fail, okay? And this is really important because not everything you do in your shop is going to work out the right way the first time. I mean, nobody just steps up to the plate and hits a home run every single pitch. Sometimes you swing and miss, and it's okay. But what we do is we learn what works, what didn't work, and if we kind of think about you might reposition some things or try something differently, you're going to learn if that doesn't really hit the ball out of the park the first time. You're going to learn what happened, what made a mistake, what could you tweak something, make a change, and then what's going to happen is you learn how to do it, and it might be the 3rd or 4th or 5th try, you nail it. And then that way you're changed forever, and you're instantly faster with something. So don't be afraid to kind of tweak something, okay? I want you to learn how to take advantage of tools, okay? And a tool can be anything, okay? It could be some software. It could be a hand truck, It could be a tape gun. It could be a new press. It could be some new equipment like a automatic screen coder. It could be all kinds of things, okay? So I want you to figure out what tools do you need to allow you to do things faster, okay? And I mentioned a hand truck because a lot of times you can see people only carrying one box when if they used a hand truck, they could cart over 3 or 4 at the same time, okay? So what we want to be looking at is eliminating steps in our process, and tools that we use allow us to handle that, okay? So what tools can you use in your shop, or maybe you're already using, but you're not using them to their fullest effect? So we're going to kind of talk about that in a little bit, okay? Another thing about speed is do it now, okay? It's to really have that hustle mentality. You know, I've been at shops where you know, they end at 5 o'clock and maybe something's up on press and they got another 30 or 40 shirts to print. They just leave, okay? So that's not really helping you compete, okay? You need to have it so you finish the job and you work on getting the next one set up. That's where you need to live. You need to in the do it now, hustle kind of mentality. And you can always tell sometimes in shops who the managers are because they tend to walk twice as fast as everybody else on the shop. Have you ever wondered why that is? Is because they're trying to hustle and get everything done, okay? So how can you get that same mentality with your crews to do things now, to hustle, to get things done? So that's what we need to be talking about with our folks, okay? And we need to be looking at our training, how we train, how our skills developed, how we're doing things, and we're going to focus on this more in a minute. But our training really matters to be able to compete, especially with speed. Because you know, if you've done something 500 times, you're way faster than if you just did it, you know, this is your 3rd time trying to do something, okay? So training really matters with stuff. Your systems and procedures you have in your shop really matter also, because if you've got, for instance, all the information on a work order, your artist knows exactly what to do to create the file. Your screen room might know what mesh to pick out. So what happens is your decisions, your folks make decisions faster, so that allows you to speed up. So what you want to do is create your systems and procedures where as much as you possibly can, you've answered somebody's question before they ask it. And that's really super important with work orders, because if anybody has to come up front to ask, hey, what does this mean? That is your clue that you need to have more information on that work order, okay? And we're going to talk about that more in just a moment. And so really kind of the thinking that we want to talk about today is digging your well before you're thirsty. So right now, you might be in a 7 to 10 day turn time, and that's working fine, and nobody really is like complaining about it. But what I'm telling you is there's going to be a lot of pressure to increase that. So I want you to start thinking about how you can drop that from 5 to 7 to 3 to 5, from 3 to 5 to next day, if you have to. That doesn't mean that every single order has to be like that, but that means how are we doing it where your rush order now becomes the norm? What would you change in your shop to be able to do that? Because speed is going to be a competitive advantage. And if you can figure this out in your shop, you're going to blow the doors off of your competition. So dig your well before you're thirsty is really kind of a great phrase that applies here. So let's talk about the first thing, and that's proactive thinking. Being proactive means not just focused on what you're doing today, but what are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing on Monday? What are you doing next Wednesday? Is everything ready? Are the goods here? Are the screens ready? Is the ink bought? Maybe you've got an order that uses metallic gold. Do you have enough? And so sometimes in shops, what happens is we only think about today's production today. You know, this morning you walk in, hey, what are we doing? You know, and so if you're proactive, everything is handled in advance. So let's kind of discuss this a little bit. So we want to solve our challenges ahead of time. So some things to keep in mind is you can look at your orders in your history and you can predict when you're going to be slow, when you're going to be speed up, just based on how many orders have been in this system over the last couple of years. So for instance, if you're in an embroidery shop, you know right now you're pretty crazy busy, okay? But in January, it might be nothing. If you're a screen print shop, maybe you're just trying to suck it through December and January because you know you're not going to start getting business until February and March. We know this. So what are we doing right now that's going to help our business stay solvent, keep going, solve our problems, whether you need overtime or you need to figure out what you're going to do with your labor because you don't have any work. And so it's really important that we can look at our history to predict what's going on, because I can tell you one of the things that a lot of shop owners do is they're all focused on in the now, what's going on just today and this week, and they're not really looking out a month to 8 weeks out, right? So right now it's practically December. We should be already talking about January. We should be talking about what we're doing in February right now, because that really matters. So what are we doing? How's that going to affect our schedule? Do we need equipment? Do we need more people? Do we need, so-and-so is going to go on vacation? Is he trained? Is his replacement trained up so somebody can step in and run his jobs for him, or mix the ink or burn the screens or whatever that guy does? So that's kind of proactive thinking, is based on history, what's ahead. We need to predict. We also need to prevent, okay? Doing things over is always slower, okay? So anytime you have to run that job over or make a new screen or mix a different ink color because it was mixed wrong, okay? That's always slower than doing it right the first time. So one of the things when I've run shops, I've always cautioned against is trying to hurry up and do things wrong, okay? I would rather people just slow down a little bit and do it right and make sure it's perfect than try to just burn through it and then guess what? You got to do something wrong. And this really matters, especially with some types of garments, because they're harder to load. For instance, extra small, as you know, is harder to put on a platen than, let's say, an extra large. And sometimes a double, triple, quadruple X is harder to print because you can't see the edges. And so what happens is we get these images that look crooked, or they're distorted because you got so much spray tack on it. So if we just slow down a little bit when we're doing these weird sizes, what happens is you won't have to do those jobs over because you don't make those mistakes. And I'm not saying slow down to the point where you're just crawling. I'm just saying just take an extra moment to make sure it's right. And so one of the things I've always talked to press operators about is if you're missing boards when you're loading shirts, your press is operating too fast. You need to just slow it down a little bit so you can load at a comfortable pace, and that way you don't miss any boards. And you can run a time study. If you're missing boards, I've got 2 press operators. One doesn't miss boards. One misses a board every once in a while. The guy that doesn't miss boards at the end of the day is going to outprint the guy that does. It's just a fact. So just make sure your people are doing what they need to do to prevent the mistakes so you don't have to do things twice, okay? The next is to really kind of plan. Think about what needs to be accomplished. So if we're thinking about tomorrow's production today, what needs to happen? Do we need to mix a Pantone color? Do we need to make sure we have ink? Do we get some goofy shirt that's boxed up and every single shirt is polybagged? So when we're running our jobs tomorrow, if your catcher has to stop what they're doing and unbag all those shirts before you lay them out on the cart or the table, you're not going to be running as effectively as if you did that task today. So what we need to be thinking about is, what do we need to get done right now so we can handle stuff when we need to handle it? And so we need to be really in tune with what's going on and plan these actions, plan this work. And I think it's really important. I was talking with a shop owner the other day, And their challenge isn't scheduling their production for printing. Their challenge is always the post-production stuff. So they got a hang tag or polybag stuff. And what happens is they print stuff pretty much on time, but their big problem is they don't treat that post-production stuff like a production event, and they're always behind on their ship dates because that's where they're struggling, is in that post-production stuff, because they got to change a label or they got to hang tag something or whatever. So it's like one of these things where they need to plan that activity just like it's a screen print or an embroidery job, and that way maybe that production event happens 2 days earlier. So the day before it's supposed to ship is when they're doing the hang tagging. So when the ship date, it's being shipped on the right day. So it's all about planning. So look at your jobs and think about when things need to happen. That's all the planning component. The next is to participate, is to get others involved. You can't do things yourself. I don't care who you are. You need to get other people involved to accomplish all your tasks, which means you need to be able to delegate. You need to be able to assign tasks. You need people to be trained and enabled to make decisions. So you don't have to be 16 places at once. You need people to participate and get involved in what you're doing to be able to accomplish your goals. Okay, so participating is really important because you're going to get buy-in from everybody. So for instance, if you want to have your art department pick out your mesh counts for your screen room so they don't have to make that decision, then the art department needs to be trained. They need to be participating in that training, understand what's going on. The screen room needs to be involved to really kind of teach them what to do. So everybody knows that, you know, for this type of job, we use a 110. For this type of job, we use a 156 for the underbases. Here's why. You know, it's solid, or it's got a halftone, or sometimes we use a 230. Here's why. Once that's done, then everything is set up in advance and everybody knows what to do. So you need to get people involved, and that way you're ratcheting up the speed because you get the buy-in from everybody. And then the last thing here is performing. You have to be able to execute what you're doing. So it's all about performance. Can you do it correctly? And for instance, you know, a lot of times we print on weird things. We print on hoodies, we print on towels, we print on string bags, we print on 2-ply jackets. You know, we're embroidering really thick Carhartt, you know, jackets or something. All these things take a little longer to do, but what happens is sometimes is it becomes a problem because it's not really something we're used to doing. And then there's all types of t-shirts. You know, there's a big difference between printing on a standard 100% cotton shirt and then maybe one of these tri-blends that's got a lot of viscose in it. You got to worry about your heat because these shirts are easily scorched, okay? So in your shop, how is your performance level on this stuff? Are you keeping track of these problems? Are you anticipating them? And the reason this really matters is because you don't want to have to do things over. You want to make sure you're knocking out home runs every single time that you're doing things. And people know what to do and know what to do in advance. And then you've trained them on stuff. So it's really important that performance really matters with all this, because you want to make sure you're printing it at the proper speed, with the proper ink, with the proper cure times. You want to make sure your embroidery is knocking out of the park and you don't have loose threads, you're watching your tension. You know, it's the same thing with digital printing also, is how's your pre-treatment? How's the white? How's the underbase? Are you leaving like a discoloration ring because of the pre-treatment on a red shirt or something that kind of affects that? Everything matters these days. So how are you executing your production? It really matters. So pay close attention to that and make sure you're documenting your challenges and that you're solving them. Sometimes you need to bring in your supply chain to help you with that. So let's minimize our downtime. And I'll show you why this really matters. Is your shop only makes money when your machines are working. So let's be sure that you make orders ridiculously easy to do. and no thinking. And I use this no thinking kind of thing, not as a joke, but you want to kind of set your team up for success by eliminating any questions that they might have. For instance, on our art approval forms or mock-ups, we can show that we want to print this image 3 inches down from the collar, or 1.5 inches up on their left sleeve from the hem or the bottom of the cuff, or whatever your dimensions are. And the reason we want to do this is we want to prepare our team for what to do. Your art department has to set it up correctly so your screens can be burned correctly. So when we put it up on our press, they can set it up on the press correctly. This all has to be done in advance. And the more that we have this type of information, the faster our team can work, the faster our team can make decisions. They can set up things easily. It just makes things so ridiculously easy to do when you have that type of information on a work order. You've trained your people on how to do it. You hold them accountable. So if it says 3 inches, that's what you're doing. And the reason you have to have that is because that's what you've told your customer. You know, I was talking with a shop owner, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago, and their big problem is they were trying to start some standards like this where they show that dimension, and then one of their production people didn't want to follow it because, hey, that's not how I've always set that up. I've set it up this way. And so my counsel to them was, you need to set up your shop way of doing things, and that's what you need to train on. And it doesn't matter how that guy does it because everybody else is doing it a certain way. You want to be predictable. So any job can run on any piece of equipment. It doesn't matter who's running it, and you get the same predictable results. And that happens by setting things up for success. So you have all that information, the print order, the Pantone color, where the flashes are, where the cool down stations are. You're giving them the recipe for success with every single work order. That stops them from wandering off and looking and trying to find things. So information is super, super important. The next thing is something I call kit packing, okay? And what this means is you want to set your production teams up for success by not having them walk anywhere on your production floor. Everything needs to go to them. So the idea here is they should only walk maybe 2 or 3 feet the whole day. So they're getting the shirts, the work order, the sample, the inks, the thread, everything is coming to them. And in fact, you're lining up tomorrow's production today with all of this stuff, and you're arranging it by their presses or by their workstations in the order that you want to run the jobs in, okay? So the order that I always talk about is you do rush orders, then you do late orders, then you do today's orders, and then you do future orders. And that's the way you line things up. You do rush orders first because, of course, somebody's paying for that rush fee, or they're doing something where it's a critical job. That's a rush order. That always skips to the head of the line in every single department. In production, it's always the first one. If you can print tomorrow's rush orders today, do it if you've got the time. But otherwise, in the morning, that's the first thing anybody works on, okay? So you work on the rush orders first. The next thing is you always want to knock out those late orders, and then you do today's jobs, then you do something that might not be due till next week. Do it in that order, but you need to kit pack all this stuff. So for your embroidery machine operators, or your DTG operator, or your screen print press operator, everything is lined up for them in the exact order they need to run the job in for tomorrow. And if you keep doing that and just reload it and reload it and reload it, and if you need to move a job out of the way because suddenly something's a rush, you do that. You don't let your press crews do that. And the more that you do that, the less decisions they have to worry about. They don't have to come check with you. They don't wander off to go find a screen or an ink or anything, thread. Everything comes to them. All they're doing is setting up a job, running the job, taking the job down, setting up another job, and it's just rinse and repeat forever. And then guess what? You're minimizing that downtime to an incredible amount, and you're going to get more jobs done every single day. So kit packing is like the #1 tip I want to get across today. The next is, of course, preventative maintenance. So how many times are you guys looking at your equipment and making sure that the grease points are greased every day, that your platens are everything's level, that your tension's right on your embroidery machines, that you're making sure everything is perfect with all your machines? You guys should be doing this on a constant basis. You need to have a preventative maintenance log, and I would recommend doing a page for every single piece of equipment in the shop, and with the model number, the serial number, and then every time you do something, you make a little list. Hey, today we did this, tomorrow we did this, whatever. And that way you know what's going on. And so many shops get behind in their work because you got an older press or you got an older piece of equipment and it goes down and you got to order a part or whatever, okay? But if you had taken care of that piece of equipment, I know shop owners that don't even know where the owner's manual for their equipment even is. They've never seen it. They got it when they got the press. They don't know where it is. It's just crazy. So what I'm saying is have a preventative maintenance plan and actually do it. And that way your machines are up more and you can work faster because you're not trying to balance some machine being down. It's really important. So the next thing is to really monitor your crew's time, okay? And I learned of a trick that a InkSoft customer does. It's Eric Michelson with Northwest Custom Apparel. And what he's a embroidery shop. And what they do is he offers a $5 bonus in the mornings for their first machine to finish a job. And the reason he does this is because he was looking at his production floor, and I forget what time they come in, so let's just say they come in at 7, and he was noticing that they wouldn't get any work done until maybe 8 o'clock. And it's because everybody in the morning was getting coffee and going to the bathroom and talking about some show they watched on TV last night or whatever, and they weren't really working. And so he started doing this, and it became a race to get the stuff done. And he gives that person a $5 bill, and everybody's happy. It's a big thrill to win the $5. And he told me he was getting 500 more shirts a day out of this $5 bonus. It's just an incredible thing. And so that's why I wanted to share it to you. But it's like one of these things. He didn't really realize that until he started monitoring time. So one of the things I'd like you to look at is where your time sinks are. And I tell you where they're going to be. They're going to be in the morning when everybody comes in. They're going to be after break. They're going to be after lunch. Okay? So look at this stuff. They're going to be at the end of the day sometimes too. So at the end of the day, nobody really wants to work. Let's say you end at 5 o'clock, at 4:45, everybody's in the bathroom or whatever. They kind of slow down a little bit. I want you to start looking at this stuff and monitoring their time because it really adds up over a day. So 10 or 15 minutes here, 10 or 15 minutes there. You could be having 45 minutes to an hour of your day that you're paying for where people aren't actually really doing anything productive. You're not going to know this unless you're monitoring it. Okay, so the old adage, you can't manage what you don't measure, comes to true here. So one thing you can do is just have a piece of paper and have everybody jot down after break when their first shirt was decorated, what time. So if your break is at 10 o'clock and they're supposed to be back at 10:15, do you see something printed by 10:20 or is it 10:45? What is going on? Now, these are averages. I know people set up jobs and stuff, so you have to work with that. But on average, what time, how long until you see a shirt? This really matters to minimize your downtime. So take a look at that. The next thing is just really asking questions. Walking around and being present. What do you need to do your job? Okay? And one of the big challenges that you'll find out is people don't have the tools they need. They don't have a Pantone book, so they have to walk across or the floor to find one, or maybe it's even in the art department, and they're supposed to match PMS, 373 green, and they don't have the Pantone book, so they don't know if it matches or not, and they just wasted 10 minutes, 15 minutes trying to find the Pantone book. Okay, well, these things are expensive. I get it. They're 120 a piece or whatever they are. But you know what? You're wasting a year's worth of time. You're probably wasting 10 times that. So it's one of these things where I think a lot of times we step over dollars to pick up dimes because we don't want to buy 6 Pantone books for the floor, but we're wasting that all the time. So kind of look at what your crews need. Does everybody have a tape gun? Does everybody have a magic marker? Does everybody have razor blades or masking tape or whatever the tools are that they are, a tape measure, okay? What are people constantly borrowing from their neighbor to do their jobs? So if you just went out and bought duplicate sets for everybody and they have a little crew of tools right there next to them, how much more work do you think they could do a day? So, and how does that affect you? Look at that and ask people what they need. And I'm reminded of a story a couple years ago. I was walking around the production floor and I noticed a guy, he was banging on the side of his computer monitor because it froze up. And not that it was the computer monitor frozen, it was actually the computer that was below it. And I go, what's going on? He's like, this stupid thing is frozen up again. I go, how often does this happen? He's like, I have to restart my computer 3 or 4 times a day. And I asked him, how long has this been going on? And he told me it's been going on for 4 months. So for 4 months, he's having to restart his computer 3 or 4 times a day. How much time did we burn with that guy dealing with this issue because he didn't want to say anything? He was scared he would get into trouble. So you have to allow people to let you know what they need to do their jobs, and it can't, you can't jump them over it. You have to just let them know you're trying to help them. Okay, so it's really, at the end of the day, it was my fault because I didn't know that, but it's like, you won't know until you ask that question. Hey, what do you need? So ask that question every single day. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is being organized on the floor. Precision is always faster. So we want to plan our efficiency. So what do I mean by that? Okay. What I'm going to talk about is what I call the rock in the river. So I want you to imagine a river in front of you. And right and directly in front of you, in the middle of the water, is this giant rock. This is a big boulder. So what happens is the water, as it's traveling downstream, has to stop and kind of move around the boulder to continue down the river. So what happens is that slows everything down. So on your production floor, you've got these rocks, okay? You've got these rocks in your river that's slowing everything down. What are they? I went to a shop a couple years ago and the accounting team didn't want their file cabinets in the office anymore. And where do they put them? They put them right in the middle of the production floor, and these people had to walk around them every single day. Walk around them every single day to go get screens, go get ink or whatever. And sure, it was only a couple steps, but you know what? Over time, that adds up. So what do you have on your shop floor that's really in the way? Do you got an old junky press? Or do you have those file cabinets? Do you stage stuff weird? Is it hard to get to your screens? Is it hard to get to your ink room? What do you have going on in your shop that is that rock in the river? Okay, so the more that you eliminate that, move it out of the way, the better. And one of the tricks that I always like doing is taking a piece of masking tape. This is not high tech. Take a piece of masking tape and write today's date on it and stick it on something, okay? And then what'll happen is 2 or 3 months later, you'll come back and today's date is on it. That date from a couple months ago is on it. You'll go, that thing hasn't moved since then. That's your clue that thing needs to go on eBay, or you need to move it to a storage site somewhere else because it's in the way. And one of those closet efficiency experts had this great idea once, which was you take all the clothes in your closet and you turn your coat hangers around backwards. And then as you use, you wear that shirt or that dress or whatever you wear, you turn your coat hanger around the right way. And at the end of the year, anything that's got the coat hanger around backwards, you donate that to Goodwill or charity or something. And that same kind of idea we can use in our shop, where what are we actually using? What are the rocks in our river? Can we eliminate this stuff? Can we get it out of our way so we can work faster? That's going to allow you to your crews just to do things better. The next is communication and the importance of information. I kind of touched on that earlier, but I kind of want to just talk about this a little bit, and how we communicate and how we know what's going on really matter. Okay, so for your crews, do they know today or tomorrow what they're supposed to do? Have you printed a production schedule that's got those 10 jobs that press 1's supposed to run today? Do they know what they're supposed to run? Do they know that by break or lunchtime, 5 of those should be done, and you're holding them accountable to that? Are you communicating that expectation to them? Are you organized that way so everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing today? If you're not, what do you think those problems cause you on a daily basis? Do people kind of wonder what's going on? Are they looking for that next job? So this type of communication really matters. And then also, what are we doing when we're working, and how can we work faster? So a great way to communicate about things is with some sort of visual signal. And so an easy, especially if you've got a big shop floor, an easy way for people to know, hey, I need some help, is you can take a big, 8-10 foot high 2x4 and nail it to the side of your catcher table. And at the top of that, you can buy on Amazon about a $10 or $12 light that looks like a top of a fire engine. So it looks like an alarm or an alert light for like 10 or 12 bucks. It can plug into an extension cord. It's got a simple little switch. You can turn it on and off, okay? And as your crews are working, if they have a problem, they need approval from a manager, they need more white ink in the underbase screen, whatever they need, they can turn that light on, and that's an instant way for somebody in management to come over and help them. And it really works great if they do it before they need the help, right? If they're almost done setting up and you're fixing to get something approved, they're dialing in the last screen, you turn that light on, and that way by the time they've registered and they've printed the first strike off, your manager is standing right there to sign off on the job, you're going to be printing much faster and getting going with your jobs at a more an increased rate than if the guy's ready, he prints the shirt, he has to go up front, he shows it to the guy, okay? So it's like one of these things. How are you communicating? How are you getting, I need some help, or I need more information? That really matters on your shop floor. By the way, I just noticed that somebody asked, is a recording of this webinar being made available for replay? And the answer is yes. Just look for our social media and you'll be able to see that. So thank you. The next thing is just lean thinking. How can we reduce our steps? And what I mean by this is when you're doing things in your shop, you might have 4 or 5 steps for something. Step 1 is this, step 2 is that, step 3 is something else. How can we reduce the amount of steps that we have so that we can spend less time and less labor on it, and we can move faster? So a great example of this is how we use, for example, masking tape. Okay, so a lot of times shops will take tape and they'll tape off the inside of our screens so we don't have to get ink in the corners or in the cracks in between the mesh and the frame. That's why we're taping the screens. So a great way to reduce that is to eliminate the use of masking tape. There is a company called Graphic Screen Fashion that sells screens that have a caulk. These are static aluminum frames that have a caulk in between the mesh, and the aluminum frame, so ink and nothing gets in there. Okay, so you don't have to tape the screens off anymore. So, and this is great because you're no longer having to burn your screen, you wash it off, you let it dry, then you're taping your screen, you use the screen, and then in Reclaim, some guy has to sit there and pick all that tape off, and they've got a giant, like, boulder size tape ball going. All that is eliminated, plus the cost of the masking tape. So you've got labor and tape. These are the steps that allow you to move faster, okay? And sure, it costs you a little more money to get that system on the screens, but the idea here is that you're going to save so much more in your labor and also just the cost of masking tape that it's just a no-brainer to do stuff like that. So that's just one example. In our shops, in our production floors, there are numerous examples that we can do where we can eliminate steps from things. For instance, let's say you've got a job that you run for a customer every other week or something, okay, and you save those screens, which a lot of people do. Where are those screens being saved? Is there just a roll around screen rack that you can put them in there that's going to be right next to the press that you normally print that job on? So when you print that job for XYZ plumbing again or whatever it is, the guy can just pull the screens out, throw them up in the press, print the job, and put them right back where they go because you're constantly printing that job. You know, so you're reducing the steps. It doesn't go through reclaiming. You don't have to redo the screens. Plus, it makes it easier for the guy to get them when he sets the job up. Okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about with lean thinking. So doing stuff like this has a cumulative effect of saving you time, which adds up over the course of the day and of the week and of the month. And so with the payoff is huge. Okay, everyone has their own set of tools. Already talked about that. No sharing. Regular improvement discussions. Okay, so for this, what we want to talk about is with your team, have you asked them, hey, what can we do? How can we get better? What do you need? What do you need to get? How is that ink working? How's the screen tension? Whatever. Are you guys having that discussion on a regular basis? It doesn't have to be necessarily a meeting. It could just be somebody walking around asking people, you know, as they're working, what do we need to change? But you're having these discussions with people and they're sharing their ideas. The best ideas I've found always come from the people who are actually doing the work. What do they need? Why are their feet sore? What do they constantly having to go ask for? If you solve these problems for them, they can work faster. And then what happens is you get more produced in a day. So ask those questions. So let's talk about standardization. There is only one way, and that's the shop way. All right. So for a lot of shops, you have, especially smaller ones, you might have an older guy that's running stuff, and I'm an old guy, so maybe, you know, I don't mean anything by that, but they've been around for a while, and it's their way. This is how we do it, okay? And if they're training somebody, they're training somebody on their way, and so what happens is you get this conflict, and it becomes almost a game of post office where, you know, Bill and Steve are both printers, and if they train printers to work under them, they might train differently and they might explain things differently. So what we want to talk about is building the procedures so everything is always done the same way and you're standardizing things, and that allows you to train new people, it allows you to hold people accountable, and also you kind of have a sense of predictability about the expectations for things. So how something's going to happen, or how long something should take, or what do you need? For instance, you know, for polyester shirts, we always use this ink. That's it. You don't use anything else. And that way there's no worry about what type of ink should we use. It's just a default thing. So let's talk about what we're talking about. So standardization of language, okay, could be a standard full front is always 12 inches wide. I talk about this a lot, so maybe you've heard this before, but it's really about establishing what you're talking about. This is your shop's vocabulary. For instance, a full front is 12 inches wide. Well, why is this important? Well, from order entry to sales, if you say it's just standard full front, your art team knows how big to make it. You know, why is it 12 inches wide? Well, it's 12 inches wide because it'll fit on an adult shirt, but it'll fit all the way down to a youth 10-12 without burning a second set of screens. That's why we use 12 inches wide. Everybody kind of knows that, and you train people on that, and it becomes a great way to work. So this could be anything. This could be, you know, our standard shop red is always PMS 186. Our standard shop blue is always PMS 286. You know, our standard red for embroidery is always Madeira lipstick red, you know, whatever. So it's like one of these things where you use these standards, and that way people can apply that thinking and they don't have to ask those questions. And this could be about a lot of things. So for instance, you know, you could have a customer pickup area, and when you finish an order, it says, you know, under shipped, it's in pickup area. And then that way everybody knows it's on that shelf, okay? It isn't in Fred the sales guy's office. It isn't on the shop floor by the shipping dock on a skid. It's on this particular shelf, and that kind of standardizes things, and that allows people to make better decisions and move faster, okay? Next is in actions. Here's how you do something. So a great example in standardizing things could be in how you set up. For instance, you could have, here's how we do our shop platens. We use a T-square, we mark a center line, we mark inch marks for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that way we know where to line up our screens for 3 inches down. We're going to load a shirt, we're going to pull the shirt back so the collar drops off the edge of the platen, and if it's supposed to be 3 inches from the collar, we have it marked off 3 inches. There's a line. The top of the artwork is right there. It's an easy way. It's a standardized way. It's the only way we set jobs up. The screens are burned to do that. The art department sets it up. The printers all know how to do it. Everybody is on the same page with that. That type of standardized action allows everybody to do things the right way. Everybody knows what to do. You can train new people on it. You can document this just with a piece of paper. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's how we do stuff. And you're training people on things. So it's a great way to do that. So look to standardizing your actions. And this is in every department. Here's how you quote. There's only one way to quote a job. It's with this price matrix or this system. You know, it's how you receive things. It's how you burn a screen. It's how you code a screen. It's how you reclaim a screen. It's how you do anything. Standardize those actions and you allow your shop to move faster, okay? In workflow, here's step 1, here's step 2, that type of stuff. So how do we do things? In our shop, the first thing we do is we put the order in, then we purchase the goods, then we create the art. When the goods come in, the day they come in, they have to be counted by the receiving team. If there's any discrepancies, the notes go in the system, the account manager is notified, we put a shipping label on the box, it's always in the upper left-hand corner of the short side of the box. It's got the work order number on it, it's got the date on it, it's got the name of the job on it. These type of workflow things really matter. You can take the last digit of your work order number, if that's on a box, you can now arrange your shop so everything is organized for kind of like before printing by the last digit of the work order number. That makes things easier to find. So if you're trying to pull a job to press 2 and the order number ends in a 6, guess what? You can just go to the 6th row, find those 2 boxes easy because there's only 3 of them, bring them to press 2, and it makes it much easier than trying to look and receiving and there's this giant wall of stuff and you don't know where anything is. So segregating things by a work order number is an easy way of doing that. And then another thing you could do is you could organize your screens out of your screen room. So you've got your screen room rack and you organize it. So each, you divide your screens up by how many screens there are for the order, not by the work order number, but how many screens there are. So what you could be doing is, you might have 3 or 4 screens that are only for one color. They're in this row. You've got screens that are for 2 colors. Those 2 screens for each job are taped together. They're on this row. And so a great way of doing that is just using a piece of masking tape, writing the work order number at the top, the name of the job, and the ship date, and then dividing your screens up by that. So if you're trying to organize your production and you're trying to put stuff out on the floor, you know that, hey, this job's got 3 screens. There's only 4 or 5 of them over there, 4 or 5 jobs over there. It's easy to find rather than just big bank of screens that you have to look at, all right? So look at your workflow and where the bottlenecks are, and then how can you segregate things? How can you figure it out? So if you organize it and you standardize the way that action happens, your team can move faster. Okay, the next thing is standardizing things in expectations, okay? It's the message that you constantly convey on the floor, okay? So expectations can be about really everything, but it's how you manage your shop. For instance, one of the things I'm always being asked about is, do we allow cell phones on the shop floor? The answer is no, okay? So the reason we don't want cell phones on the shop floor is because people spend time on their phone rather than working. So leave it in the locker, leave it in your purse. Don't touch it until break or lunch. That's the rule. Okay, so that's the expectation. That allows your shop to actually work faster because nobody's checking, Facebook at 10 o'clock when something, needs to be done. They're not doing that because that's the rule. So the expectation could be about that. It could be about the jobs that we're printing. It could be about how, if you don't have anything to do, here's the broom. It could be about a lot of stuff. Can you eat a chocolate bar or Doritos on the production floor? It could be about where things happen. It could be about anything, okay? So the message that you're conveying is the expectations that you want. So you have to constantly talk about this. You have to train people on it. You have to build that procedure and keep going. The next thing is an accountability, or all your canoes paddling in the same direction. So it's just basically you treat everybody the same. The expectation is that we want this to happen a certain way, and there's only one way of doing it. So let's get into automation, because I'm running a little long here, so I want to kind of hurry up, I guess. So we want to take some steps out of the process. So in your shop, automation could mean more equipment. I want you to run the return on investment and look at that. So for instance, if you're burning a lot of screens per day, or you're having some quality control problems with your emulsion, maybe you need to look at getting an autocoder. An autocoder means everything is done the same way every single time. You can control your EOM. Your return on investment might be huge because you're standardizing that process and making sure things happen. You don't have to have so many people in the screen room. You can put a screen in the autocoder, walk away, the guy goes and burns a job, comes back, takes the screen out, puts another screen in, he goes and does something else. So you can reduce your labor. So that type of thing is what I'm talking about. Automation could also mean better quality, less rework. Okay, so if you're looking at things that you can change in your shop, is can we, for instance, go from a manual press to an auto press? One of the problems that we have with screen printing with a manual guy is that, the pressure changes with how he controls the squeegee. So maybe he's mad at his wife or something and he presses too hard on the squeegee. You're going to get a different result than if he just did it normally. On a machine, it's the same every time. It's based on how you dialed it in, but you can get better precision. You can have better repeat work. You can have less rework because it's more of a standard. So that's what I mean by automation. Technology, there's an app for that. Okay, so InkSoft, of course, we use technology a lot for orders and stuff, but we're going to come out with a production manager tool That's going to be great technology. But there's also great technology out there you can use on your floor. You know, you can download the Pantone app to see what a color is on your phone. It's not really good for matching like a Pantone book is, but if you want to know what some crazy color is like 7305, it's a great way to look stuff up. You can also use technology for understanding tracking numbers and all types of different things. So how can technology help your shop? Standardizing workflow, okay? So an automated thing could mean if you've got a polyester job, we always use Wilflex Performance White and Underbase Gray. That's the standard. So that's automatically dropped into the order every single time, and that way your production crew knows what to do. There isn't any argument about it. You standardize that with an automated process. So that's an example of that. And then also it's ready to use. We use pre-purchase inventory, for example. So a great way to reduce your lead times is that you've got stock on the shelf. That's how a lot of these shops are running things at such a crazy turn time, is because they've already got the inventory on their floor. They don't have to worry about when Sanmar is going to deliver it. So if you're, for instance, you've got an online store and you're always using Bella 3001, just keep some Bella 3001 and limit the number of colors. And guess what? You can just pull from that stock. You can throw it on your DTG press and you could be printing that same day if you've got that built up that way. So that's a great way to reduce your lead times because you don't have to worry about that. Now, you know, you can always order, and if you're in a geographical location where it's only 1 day ground from you, that could save you tons of money, but they might be out, you know, so just look at that and see how that can work for you. So let's talk about teamwork and training. This is your secret weapon. Your shop machines don't run by themselves. They run from your employees. So everything you do is in the hands of your employees. So teamwork really plays an important part here because it makes things easier for others downstream. So when sales helps out by making sure that information is right, and maybe they let the art department know that they got to work on something, that gets them going faster. Or, you know, what happens is the art department will take the job work orders and they'll bring them down to the screen room. Or after production is completed, somebody puts things on a skid or a hand cart and drags them over to shipping, so the shipping guy doesn't have to go find it. Everybody who makes it easier for the next guy downstream makes your whole shop run faster. So look to see how teamwork can play a part on your shop, how everybody is, that whole cycle, that whole circle, how we're getting everything done by pushing things downstream to the next guy is going to allow you to move faster. Training means more staff has the right skills. So in your shop, does everybody know a different skill? For instance, does your press operator know how to burn screens? Does he know how to mix ink? Does he know how to do these things? This is important because if he has those skills, it's easy for them to look at something and go, hey, that isn't right. You know, that bucket of ink was mixed wrong, or that screen tension is off. Because they have that knowledge, it allows them to make better decisions. It allows your quality to go up if you've trained people in these different areas. You know, customer service, I like customer service to have a little knowledge of production, so get them out on the production floor. Get them in that receiving team so they know what it's like to check in inventory and mark things received, and why is having the PO number on the packing slip important. Once people understand this stuff, they're able to talk more intelligently and make better decisions. So teamwork is great for group thinking and not silos. One of the big problems in shops is we always have this issue where production versus the front office, okay? So we have this us versus them mentality. Teamwork breaks that down. So if we think about the order isn't that salesperson's order, it's the company's order. This isn't my art design, it's the company's design. If we start thinking about how orders are all in all one company thing and not just your department focused, that allows us to move faster and think about things better because we're on the same team. It makes things much nicer, less stressful, less anxiety. So you really want that teamwork going. And then, of course, training builds quality. You have less rework when we know what we're doing. So you need to have people have experience doing things, and that way they can move faster and get things done better. Because if you've done something 1,000 times, it's a lot easier than if you did it only 10. So you have to allow people time driving the car to be able to do things the right way. So that could be setting up a job on press, that could be running a press, that could be shipping to Canada, that could be whatever it is. You need to let people have that time, and that's going to build that quality. And that way everybody knows what to do. You can double check each other. There's less rework because your quality increases, because the knowledge base of your employees increases as well. And then when we add teamwork and training together, our staff knows what to do. They're contributing to the success. And then you're on a launch pad where you're really moving in. So let's just quickly review, because I don't want to go too far over. Production speed increases when problems are solved proactively. So instead of having this problem today, what happened 2 or 3 days ago? Do we know, for instance, that those mediums aren't going to come in until next Monday? So why is that job on today's schedule, right? So we should be moving things out. We should be solving these problems proactively so they aren't on our list for today. We'll only do that if we're looking ahead. So when we don't have screens, when we don't have that job digitized, when that art isn't approved, when we're missing those 30 mediums, these are the things we need to look at for tomorrow's schedule or a Monday schedule or Tuesdays or whatever. So we need to solve these problems as far in advance as we can, and then we need to make decisions based on whatever we find out. Okay, we want to minimize our downtime. More is always better than zero. Okay, so even if you're printing something slower, okay, that's better than not printing at all. So what we want to look at is we want to look at how much downtime are we spending a day not doing our jobs. If we're not printing, if we're not embroidering, or if we're not heat pressing, if we're not doing this stuff, we're not making any money. So what is causing this problem right now? Even a minute can add up, because over the course of the day, that might add up to 30, 40 minutes. That could be a couple hundred shirts. So what are we doing every single day to minimize our downtime? Are we tracking that? How can we get more done today? And even if we, for instance, at the end of the day, we only halfway set up a job on registration on our press, when we come in the morning, we only have to do the other half. A lot of times we just, okay, it's 15 minutes. We're just going to knock off. What can we do to get ready for tomorrow? Organization is a priority. Next is ready already. So today, you need to be set up for tomorrow. Okay, your next job should be in line already. Nobody should ever go look for anything. Everything should come to the people doing the work, and that's going to get them set up and ready to go, and you're going to get more stuff done in a day. You want to use standards. This is the way that we do it. You want to find out if you can use automation. It doesn't have to be a machine. It can be in your language. It can be in decisions that you make. It can be all kinds of things. But look to see if we have a certain way of doing something that's a manual, or it's a some decision tree that so-and-so has to approve it. How can we speed that up by automating it? What can we do? Is there an app? Is there a machine? Is there a decision tree? Can we train somebody and empower them to make that decision for us? What do we have to do to get things through the system faster by automating a process? And then, of course, we want to work as a team, no silos. So we got some questions, and we'll get going with that. And as usual, you can always contact me at marshall@inksoft.com, and here's my phone number. So let's look at some questions real quick. And this one guy asked, we talk a lot about how to make production faster. What is your opinion or idea on the front end, parentheses, paperwork, and speeding that process up? I'm a big believer that getting quotes, prices out fast will help bring in more money to the company. A lot of the time we spend too much time on quoting customers, and we lose customers because of that. So my answer to that is, what is your process? Why is it spending too much time? Is it because you have to find out the answers? Is there a way that you can get those prepared faster? Do you have that set up already? For instance, do you use a pricing matrix where you just say, hey, here's a good, better, best for a t-shirt. I know what the markup is. Here's my decoration fee based on how many shirts we're ordering. And then out comes the price, and we can quote our customer that way. Or are you custom doing it every single time? What's delaying that? So that's the first thing I would find out. And the other thing that I would caution against is you want to schedule jobs when the orders happen, okay? I wouldn't put a job on a schedule until it was actual a real order, okay? So if you're still monkeying around with designing the art and they haven't paid you any money, you haven't ordered any shirts yet, that job doesn't go on next Tuesday's schedule, okay? You need to get your customers to commit earlier and get them to send you the money, get them to pay for the job, get them to get going with things. And that means that, yes, I'll book that job on next Tuesday's schedule. I think a lot of times we just dump things on production to solve for us, and they become kind of the scapegoat. So to me, what we want to do is we want to put jobs in, for instance, jobs get put in today. We want to purchase that job today. We want to get the shirts bought or pulled from inventory if we can, if you stock them. And then what we want to do is we want to create the art as soon as we can. We want to get that the screens burned or their job digitized as soon as we can. And then we want to work backwards from the ship date. So if our ship date, for example, let's say is next Friday, okay, that job should be ready to produce, ready to ship next Thursday, which means we might have to start that job in production on Wednesday, which means we need those screens burned on Tuesday, which means we need that art approved on Monday, which means that we need to send that art out, guess what? Tomorrow, okay? So it's one of these things you have to kind of work backwards from what your goal is and then try to achieve that as much as you can. You might not be perfect, but you know what? If you get 50 or 60% of your production done the day before it's supposed to ship, that really frees up a lot of your day on that day that's supposed to ship. I know it's not perfect. You know, the goal is really to get everything done beforehand, but if you can't do that, try to get as much as you can. Use the 80-20 rule, right? So what jobs can you do right this second to free up as much space as you possibly can on your schedule that's going to make the biggest difference that you can? Okay, so 20% of your work might be 80% of your problem. So kind of look at that and see if you can adjust that. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, email me at marshall@inksoft.com. All right, another question is, will the slides be available in PDF or printout form? Could be useful for reference. I'll happily send you this. Just email me and I'll shoot it over to you. I do everything as a Google slide presentation, so it's really, I don't have it as an actual document, but I'll just share that with you, and you can't edit it, but you can review. Okay, so next question is, how do you know to decide to either automate or hire an employee? Well, that's a good question. So one of the things I would kind of think about here is, do you have that 5 buckets project that I've talked about previously, where you're measuring your cost per impression? An easy way to figure out monetarily wise is you can look at how many impressions that you think you're going to do, say in December or January, okay? And then what you can do is figure out, if you were to add an employee, let's say at $10 an hour, right? They work 40 hours a week, so that's $400. If you were to add $400 to your labor total, how much was that cost you per impression for your labor dollars? And does that make a big difference or not? And then what is that guy doing? Is that guy running a piece of equipment? Is he just a floater to help put ink into a thing? Is he in the screen room? What does he make? What difference is he making? Is that going to make a significant difference? I'd say that's way cheaper than adding another piece of equipment or automating something that could be expensive, okay? But you also have to look at the quality of things, right? So an automatic screen coder, for example, excuse me, is could be, you know, $30,000-$40,000. So is that a better way to go because you can use less people in a screen room? How many more screens a day are going to get out of it? You can just do a little cost study to see what the difference is, and you can compare between hiring a guy and getting a piece of equipment, and what are you doing? So I would look at it that way. Use a spreadsheet, use some math, and do a time study where you're going, how many screens do we do a day? So if you're only coding, let's say 25 screens a day for some reason, okay, adding another person gets you what? Gets you 50 screens? How much can you do with an automatic coder, okay? So it's just one of these things, you can do the math on it, you can figure out what you need to do doing it that way. If you need some more help, just email me and I'll be happy to kind of help you with that. And let's see, you got any more questions? Okay, so anyway, so that's it. So thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate you, and please email me if you've got questions. You want a copy of the slides for this or anything, it's Marshall@inksoft.com, and have a great day. Thank you.